Anything could happen if we let it.
We're talking about money, and we're talking about ultimately standing in the polls.
Democracy is at risk.
The timing seems kind of strange that they have a debate one day, and then the next day they drop a reporter from three of the candidates.
Ambassador Braun, Reverend Sharpton, Congressman Kucinich, you don't have any money.
Democracy is at risk because we've got 6 big corporate media outlets that are controlling the public's access to information about presidential candidates.
I'd like to hear what each candidate stands for.
There are presidential candidates out there who have big ideas and good ideas about how to heal America.
I don't want anybody else deciding for me who I have the option of voting for in a presidential election. I'd like to hear what each candidate stands for.
We're talking about money, and we're talking about ultimately standing in the polls.
I would suggest that Iraq is actually what this debate is about. And if you don't make the connection between the $155 billion we've spent in less than a year, the $400 billion in the bloated Pentagon budget, and the fear that's driving this nation into greater and greater involvement in Iraq, if you don't make that connection, then you're never going to understand why we don't have money for health care and housing and education. Our entire domestic agenda is at risk because of our occupation of Iraq. That's why I suggest it is urgent to put this on the agenda, to end the occupation, to get the UN in and the U.S. out. We want this country to be safe. We want this country to be secure.
There come a point when polls, money, and then ultimately the actual votes that will take place here in places like New Hampshire, the Caucuses, and Iowa, will there come a point when we can expect one or more of the three of you to drop out, or are you in this as sort of a vanity?
It's way too early in this campaign to exclude anybody.
It's not up to ABC or NBC or any other corporate media outlet to filter the information that the public sees about candidates based on their internal decision on viability or vanity or some other reason why they don't.
We are reducing politics to people with money. I think that Americans want people with ideas. The suggestion is that if you can't buy your way now.
The candidates are all out there. It's up to the people to decide. Let's let the people do the deciding, and let's let the news media cover the news.
It's way too early in this campaign to exclude anybody.
Anything could happen if we let it.
Democracy is at risk.
You're not doing terribly well with money. You're doing even worse in the polls. Well, when do you pull out?
When I take the oath of office, we're neither to cover it. And I can tell you, Ted, you know, we started at the beginning of this evening talking about an endorsement. Well, I want the American people to see where the media takes politics in this country. We start with endorsement. We start talking about endorsements. Now we're talking about polls, and then we're talking about money. Well, you know, when you do that, you don't have to talk about what's important to the American people. Ted, I'm the only one up here on a stage that actually voted against the Patriot Act and voted against the war. The only one on the stage. I'm also one of the few candidates up there who's talking about taking our health care system from this for-profit system to a not-for-profit, single-payer, universal health care for all. I'm also the only one who has talked about getting out of NAFTA and the WTO and going back to bilateral trade conditioned on workers' rights, human rights, and the environment. Now, I may be inconvenient for some of those in the media, but, you know, I'm sorry about that.
We're talking about money, and we're talking about ultimately standing in the polls.
I'd like to hear what each candidate stands for.
My name is Charlie Underwood. I'm a 60-year-old kindergarten teacher, and I've never run for office before, and you have every right to ask, what is this guy doing up in front of the state convention today? I feel that we all must do whatever we can to stop this awful war in Iraq. I've heard a saying that sometimes you must speak loudly even if your voice quivers. Someone must speak out against this war, and someone must point the direction of how we as Democrats can stop it. And so I propose to speak to you. I'm 60 years old, as I said, and I grew up during the Cold War.
you.